I never thought I'd stumble upon something as sinister as metal spikes buried in Grandma Eleanor's driveway. Can you imagine the shock? My heart raced when I realized the HOA wasn't just picking on her adorable blue cottage out of pettiness. No, this was personal. A twisted kind of revenge because Grandma, my sweet cookie-baking grandma, was secretly a senior prosecutor hunting real estate fraud. What would these shady HOA folks do when they found out their target was the one building a case to take them down? The thought sent chills down my spine. Pulling into Grandma Eleanor's driveway, I lugged my suitcase and a box of her favorite glazed donuts, her ultimate weakness. That little blue cottage with its crisp white trim sat tucked among towering pine trees, looking like a snapshot from all my childhood summers. But wait, what was that? A garish orange paper flapped on her front door, screaming trouble. My stomach twisted as I snatched it up. A violation notice. Unapproved exterior paint color, demanding action in 72 hours? That made zero sense. Grandma's cottage had been this dreamy sky blue forever. How could they complain now? Welcome to Pinterest Village, a syrupy voice chirped from next door. There stood a woman with flawless blonde highlights, arms crossed over a designer blouse that probably cost more than my car. I'm Karen Thompson, HOA Community Standards Committee Chair. I plastered on a smile, trying not to roll my eyes. Hi, I'm Jamie, Eleanor's grandchild. I'm house-sitting while she recovers from surgery. Karen's smile was all lips, no warmth. Such a shame about Eleanor. Neighbors for, 5 years? The rules are crystal clear. Exterior paint colors need committee approval. She shot a snooty glance at the cottage. That blue was grandfathered in, but if it needs repainting, it's got to switch to our approved palette. Earth tones, you know? I squinted at the cottage. The paint looked pristine, not a chip in sight. It looks freshly painted to me, I said, raising an eyebrow. Karen's smug tone made my skin crawl. Our inspector noted significant fading on the west-facing wall. The violation stands 72 hours, or fines kick in at $100 a day. As she strutted off, I caught her husband, Robert, staring from their porch. Our eyes locked, and poof, he vanished inside. What was his deal? Stepping into Grandma's cottage felt like a warm hug. Handmade quilts draped over cozy chairs, a bookshelf stuffed with mystery novels, and that faint cinnamon scent lingering in the air, pure comfort. I dialed her at the rehab center right away. Jamie, sweetie, I'm so glad you made it. Grandma's voice was tired but steady, like she was ready to take on the world. When I spilled the beans about the violation notice, she let out a heavy sigh. That's the third one this month. First, they whined about my roses growing too close to the sidewalk, then my mailbox being non-standard. Can you believe it? It's the original from when I bought this place. But you've owned this cottage for decades, I said, totally baffled. How can they just start enforcing these rules now? Grandma's tone sharpened. That's what happens when developers hijack the HOA board. Richard Vaughn took over as president 6 months ago. He's a lawyer for Pinnacle Development Group, and they're snapping up properties all over Pinterest, bulldozing charming old homes to slap up massive modern boxes that sell for triple the price. I peeked out the window at Karen's house, a hulking gray and white monstrosity that loomed over Grandma's cottage. Let me guess, the Thompsons are in on it? Robert Thompson's the CEO, Grandma confirmed. They've got their eyes on my lot because it's on the corner with that gorgeous creek view prime spot for their fanciest model home. A shiver hit me despite the balmy June air. Don't worry, Grandma, I'll handle this. You just focus on getting better, okay? After we hung up, I couldn't sit still. I had to check the property myself. In the backyard, my jaw dropped. Grandma's prized rose bushes. Her pride and joy were butchered. Not neatly pruned like she'd do, but hacked to bits. Who would do that? Wandering to the faded west wall, which looked perfectly vibrant, my foot snagged on something in the gravel driveway. I crouched down and my blood froze. Metal spikes. Not one, but a handful wedged right where car tires would hit. Using a garden glove from Grandma's shed, I gathered them up, my hands trembling. These weren't random junk, they were caltrops meant to shred tires. Someone had planted them to hurt Grandma or force her out. That night, sleep was a lost cause. My mind spun with thoughts of those violation notices, the mutilated roses, and now those wicked spikes. This wasn't just an overzealous HOA. It was a calculated plot to break Grandma Eleanor's spirit until she'd sell her beloved cottage. Curled up on her couch, I dove into the Pinterest Village HOA rulebook, online over 200 pages of nonsense. Nowhere did it mention approved paint colors or force grandfathered properties to follow new rules. In fact, Section 12(4) was crystal clear. Historic homes like Grandma's 1932 cottage were shielded from retroactive changes. Gotcha! Around midnight, headlights sliced through the living room, yanking me from my research. I crept to the curtains and peeked out. A black SUV crawled by, lights dimmed, pausing right in front of Grandma's house. My heart pounded as I snapped photos with my phone. The SUV circled the cul-de-sac and passed again, its license plate flashing PNC-owned Pinnacle. What were they doing, staking out her house at midnight? That orange violation notice suddenly felt like the tip of a very dark iceberg. Morning hit me with another gut punch. The cottage's mailbox was smashed to bits, twisted like it'd been rammed by a truck. Tucked inside, another orange notice, this time griping about improper yard maintenance, with a 48-hour deadline. I snapped photos, fuming, and propped the mailbox up as best I could. This was beyond ridiculous. As I headed back inside, there was Karen, fake watering her plants while eyeing me like a hawk. "Terrible about that mailbox," she called, all crocodile tears. "Teenagers around here can be so wild. You should replace it with an approved model. I've got a catalog if you want." I bit my tongue to stay calm. "Thanks, but I'll fix this one. It's an original, part of the property's charm." Karen's smile tightened, like she was chewing glass. "Well, damaged mailboxes violate regulations. The committee will have to issue another violation if it's not replaced properly." I'd had it. "Oh, I'll make sure to bring all these violations up at the next HOA meeting." "When is that, anyway?" A flicker of something panic crossed her eyes. "Not for 3 weeks, but Richard handles emergency matters anytime. I'm meeting him this afternoon if you'd like me to mention your situation." "I'll deal with it myself," I shot back, turning away. As I reached the door, I caught her on her phone, voice low. "She's not leaving. No, I don't think she knows anything. We might need to accelerate the timeline." "Accelerate what?" Inside, I paced Grandma's cozy living room, my mind racing. Why were they gunning for Grandma so hard? What was this timeline Karen was whispering about? And those spikes who'd stooped that low? I had to confront this Richard Vaughn guy myself. The HOA website said their office was open from 1 to 4 p.m. AT, the community center. Grabbing a folder stuffed with the violation notices, spike photos, and my rule book printouts, I headed out, a knot of dread and determination in my chest. Something was rotten in Pinterest Village, and I was going to find out what. The community center sparkled with fresh paint and fancy landscaping way too posh compared to the grief they were piling on Grandma's humble cottage. I marched through the glass doors, gripping my folder like a shield. A receptionist with a fake smile pointed me to the HOA office. As I neared, Karen's voice, shrill and urgent, leaked through the half-open door. "We need to move fast on the Curtis property. My sources say she's been poking around the county records office." My heart skipped. Were they talking about Grandma? "Patience, Karen." A smooth, smug voice answered. "The assessment hike hits next week. With that and the violations, she'll be drowning in debt by month's end." "But what if?" Karen's words cut off as I shoved the door open. Two faces whipped toward me, shock melting into fake smiles. Karen jumped up from a chair across from a glossy mahogany desk. Behind it lounged a middle-aged guy in a pricey golf shirt, his tanned face all charm and no sincerity. "Jamie, what a coincidence," Karen chirped, too brightly. I was just chatting about your grandmother's situation with our HOA president, Richard Vaughn. My pulse hammered as I met Richard's gaze. This was the guy pulling the strings time to see how he'd squirm. Funny you're talking about Grandma, I said, keeping my voice steady. I've got some questions about what's happening to her cottage. What would they say next? Would they slip up and reveal their whole shady plan? My heart was still pounding from overhearing Karen and Richard's sneaky little chat. Could they really think they'd get away with this? I stood there, staring at Richard Vaughn as he rose from behind his fancy desk, extending his hand like we were old pals. "A pleasure to meet Eleanor's grandchild," he said, all smooth and polished. "We're all so concerned about her property falling into disrepair while she's away." His handshake was firm, but that smile, total fake. I spotted a framed photo on his desk, Richard grinning ear to ear with Robert Thompson, Karen's husband, under a banner screaming Pinnacle Development Group, building tomorrow's Pinterest today. "Oh, really? Disrepair. Funny you should mention that," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. I reached into my folder and dropped those jagged tire spikes right on his shiny desk. "I found these deliberately planted in Grandma's driveway yesterday. Care to explain?" Richard's smile didn't budge, but his eyes turned cold as ice. "That's concerning," he said, brushing it off. "But vandalism's a police matter, not HOA business." Oh, he thought he could dodge me that easily? "I've already filed a police report," I lied, smooth as silk. "They're checking nearby security cameras. Thought you'd want a heads up since this happened right after that first violation notice showed up." Karen's face went pale, just a flicker, but I caught it. "Are you implying something?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I wasn't backing down, not today." I flipped open my folder and spread out the violation notices like a winning poker hand. "I'm implying these notices are based on rules that don't even exist in your own regulations. Section 12.4 clearly says historic properties like Grandma's cottage are exempt from retroactive changes. Want to tell me why you're ignoring that?" For a split second, Richard's cool guy mask slipped gotcha. "The board recently voted to remove those exemptions," he said, trying to sound bored. "Remove them? Without a peep to homeowners? That's against state law on HOA governance." I shot back, silently thanking the late-night research that armed me for this showdown. Richard waved a hand, like I was some annoying fly. "Notifications are being processed. Now, if there's nothing else, Karen and I have business to discuss." Oh, he wasn't getting rid of me that fast. "Actually, there is something else." I pulled out a property map of Pinterest Village, Grandma's corner lot circled in bright red. "I'm dying to know, why did Pinnacle Development file building plans for Grandma's property 3 months ago when she's never once said she wants to sell?" The room went dead silent. Richard's fake charm vanished, his eyes glinting with something dark calculation maybe. "Those plans were speculative," he said after a beat, his voice too calm. "Pinnacle often drafts concepts for properties to streamline things if owners decide to sell. Speculative? What a load." "Interesting strategy," I said, leaning in. "Especially when it comes with targeted harassment to pressure those owners into selling." Karen shot to her feet, her face twisting. "That's an outrageous accusation. The HOA enforces standards equally for everyone." "Equally? Ha, really?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Then you won't mind if I request records of every violation issued in the last 6 months. Public records laws apply to as in this state, you know." Richard's jaw clenched so tight, I thought it might crack. "Submit your request in writing. We'll respond within the required 30 days. "Oh, I already did," I said, whipping out a certified mail receipt like a secret weapon. "Sent it yesterday to your office and the State Housing Authority. They're real curious about any patterns of targeting. Total bluff. But oh, their faces." Karen's cheeks flushed red, and a vein throbbed in Richard's temple, even though he kept that icy facade. "We're done here," he said, his voice hard as steel. "Bring your concerns to the next board meeting like everyone else." I turned to leave, but Richard couldn't resist a parting shot. "By the way, the board approved a special assessment for corner properties last month. Your grandmother's getting a notice for a $300 monthly increase starting next week for infrastructure improvements." The threat was clear as day. "Back off or we'll bury her." I forced my face to stay calm, though rage boiled inside me. "I'll make sure she gets it," I said coolly. "And I'll make sure the housing authority gets a copy too." Outside, I slumped against my car in the parking lot, my hands trembling from the showdown. This wasn't just harassment. It was a full-on scheme to shove people out of their homes. As I glanced back at the community center, there was Karen, staring at me through a window, phone glued to her ear. Who was she ratting to now? I needed backup, fast. Grandma had lived in Pinterest Village for 30 years. She had to have friends here, neighbors who'd seen this kind of pressure, right? Someone had to know what was going on. I peeled out of the lot, but a silver sedan slid in behind me, tailing me like a shadow. My pulse spiked. What was this? I zigzagged through random streets, and it stuck with me, never too close, but always there. Only when I veered toward the police station did it finally peel off. Phew! Then my phone rang an unknown number. I answered, cautious as a cat. "Is this Eleanor Curtis's grandchild?" A woman's voice whispered, tense and nervous. "Yeah, this is Jamie. Who's this?" "Sophia Ramirez. I live across from your grandmother." Her voice dropped even lower. "Don't go back to the cottage right now. They're watching it. Meet me at the Riverside Cafe in 20 minutes. I've got info about what's happening to Eleanor and the others." "Others?" My stomach twisted. "What do you mean, others?" "Your grandmother's not the first they've targeted," Sophia said. "But she might be the one to stop them if you help her. 20 minutes. Come alone." Click, the line went dead. I sat in my idling car, my mind spinning. Was this a trap or the break I needed? Either way, I had to know more. As I headed toward downtown and the Riverside Cafe, one question burned in my brain. What did Sophia mean about Grandma stopping them? What kind of secrets was my cookie-baking, mystery novel-loving grandmother hiding that made her so dangerous to these creeps? A few hours later, glass crunched under my sneakers as I swept up the shards of a flower pot smashed through Grandma's window. My hands shook, not just from the mess, but from the note wrapped around a rock inside. "Sell now, or worse will come." Worse? This wasn't just nasty neighbors anymore. It was straight-up criminal. "You okay over there?" Mr. Washington called from across the street, pointing at his doorbell camera. "Caught that on video if you need it." I nodded, grateful finally. A lifeline. I rushed back inside, desperate to find Grandma's property papers to fight the HOA's lies about her blue paint. Her study was tidy but crammed with boxes, each labeled by year, like a time capsule of her life. In the corner, I spotted a small filing cabinet with a heavy padlock I'd never noticed before. Weird. Rain started pounding outside as I hunted for the key. A flash of lightning lit up the room, glinting off Grandma's keyring on her desk. A tiny golden gavel dangled from it, a quirky charm I'd always wondered about. On a whim, I tried it in the lock. Click! It opened, and my jaw dropped. Inside wasn't just property papers. There was a folder labeled Pinnacle Development Group Evidence File. My heart raced as I flipped through it. Photos of Richard Vaughn shaking hands with slick-suited men, bank statements, secret recordings, maps with neighborhoods marked in red circles. What was all this? "What are you doing with my case files?" Grandma's voice blared from my phone, making me jump sky high. I must have hit speed dial by mistake. "Grandma, why do you have investigation files on Karen's husband's company?" I whispered, my voice barely steady. A long pause hung between us. "Jamie, listen carefully," she said, her tone turning razor sharp. Nothing like the soft Grandma I knew. That box holds evidence I've been gathering for 2 years. I'm not just a retired school teacher. My cookie baking, rose tending grandmother's voice went stern, like a judge in a courtroom. I'm Senior Prosecutor Eleanor Curtis, White Collar Crime Division. The hip surgery? It's a cover. While I build this case, I sank into her chair, my head spinning. Grandma, a secret agent. Pinnacle's targeting homes here and across 3 counties, she went on. They bully elderly residents with fake HOA violations, then scoop up their properties for pennies. Richard handles the legal dirty work. Karen picks out vulnerable targets. Her voice dropped to a hush. They've already done this to 26 seniors. I moved here undercover when we spotted the pattern. I stared at the photos scattered across the desk, my mind blown. That's why they're after your cottage. They don't know who you are, but they want your land for its lake access. I've been collecting evidence while a deafening crash downstairs cut her off. I peeked through the blinds. Karen's SUV was tearing down the street. Downstairs, the living room window was shattered, rain pouring over broken glass. Jamie, what happened? Grandma's voice crackled from the phone I dropped on the desk. I raced back up, my heart sinking as I saw a folder missing from the box, the main evidence file. Someone broke in. I gasped, grabbing the phone. I think they stole your case file. Check the blue book on the 3rd shelf, Grandma said, cool as a cucumber. I yanked down an old cookbook, hollowed out. Inside was a USB drive and backup files. Always keep copies, she said. But now you're in danger, Jamie. They've seen you there. They'll think you know everything. A car door slammed outside, snapping my nerves tight. Oh no, they were here. I peeked through the window, my breath catching as I saw Richard Vaughn striding toward Grandma's cottage, phone pressed to his ear, his face all business. Behind him, Karen's SUV sat idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the stormy night. They're here, I whispered into the phone, my voice trembling. Back door, now. Grandma's voice barked, sharp and commanding, like a general in battle. Grab the files and get to Sofia Ramirez at 156. Maple, she's been helping me build this case. The doorbell rang, followed by pounding that shook the walls. Jamie, open up. We need to discuss the additional violations on your grandmother's property. Richard's voice boomed, dripping with fake concern. My hands flew, stuffing the remaining files and that precious USB into my backpack as the knocking grew louder. More insistent were they going to break in? One more thing, Grandma said, her tone urgent, almost desperate. In my bedroom closet behind the shoe rack. Her words cut off as the front door splintered with a sickening crash, heavy footsteps storming inside. My heart leapt into my throat. Oh God, I was out of time. I have to go. I hissed, ending the call, my fingers shaking so bad. I nearly dropped the phone. The back door was just across the hallway, my only shot at escape. If I could move quietly enough, maybe, just maybe, I'd make it out before they caught me. I crept from the study, clutching my backpack so tight my knuckles turned white. Check upstairs. Richard's voice barked, cold and commanding. Find those documents. Footsteps thumped up the stairs, each one spiking my pulse higher. I tiptoed toward the back door, every creak of the floorboard screaming betrayal. My hand grazed the knob. Freedom was so close, when Karen's voice sliced through the air, stopping me dead. Going somewhere? She purred, blocking the exit with a smile that was all teeth, no warmth. My stomach dropped. Busted! Grandma asked me to water her plants while she's away. I lied, forcing an innocent grin despite the backpack practically burning a hole in my chest. Karen's eyes narrowed, sharp as a hawk's. Then you won't mind if we check what's in that bag, she said, reaching for it. Richard found them downstairs. My heart hammered so loud I swore she could hear it. I needed a way out, now. Thinking fast, I faked a stumble, knocking over a ceramic vase that shattered across the floor with a glorious crash. Karen flinched, jumping back from the flying glass, and I seized my chance. Bam! I shoved past her, slamming the screen door open and sprinting into the rain-soaked night. Stop her! Karen's scream chased me as I tore across the wet grass, mud splashing up my jeans. The storm drenched me, but I didn't care. I had to get away. Richard's furious shouts faded as I darted between houses, cutting through a neighbor's yard and diving behind a garden shed, my chest heaving. I was safe for now. Fumbling with my phone, I pulled up a map, my fingers slippery from the rain. Yes! 156 Maple was just 2 blocks away. Could I make it without them spotting me? As I steeled myself to run again, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Behind you. Don't scream. I'm a friend. My heart lurched, friend or trap. I whirled around, half expecting Richard's goons, but there stood an elderly woman with steel gray hair, holding an umbrella against the downpour. Sofia Ramirez, she said softly, her eyes kind but urgent. Eleanor texted me. Come quickly. Relief flooded me, thank God. She led me through a maze of backyard shortcuts, weaving past fences and flower beds until we reached a cheery yellow house with a garden bursting with color, even in the rain. Inside, Sophia slammed 3 deadbolts shut with a clang. Welcome to Resistance Headquarters, she said, gesturing to a dining room where 3 other seniors sat around a table piled with maps, documents, and coffee mugs had. I just stumbled into a secret rebellion. A tall man with snow-white hair stood, his presence commanding. Judge Marcus Johnson, retired, he said warmly. Eleanor told us you have the files? I nodded, my hands still shaky as I pulled out the USB and papers from my soggy backpack. Perfect, said a woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, scribbling in a notebook. Debbie Patel, editor of the Pinehurst Gazette. I've been tracking property transfers for months. The 4th person, a guy with a laptop glowing in front of him, gave a nod. Tyler Washington. Those cameras on my house? Not just for show. Sophia handed me a steaming mug of hot chocolate, bless her, and they dove into explaining Pinnacle Development's dirty scheme. They targeted senior communities, wormed their way onto HOA boards, then hit homeowners with impossible rules and violations until they cracked and sold cheap. How low could these people go? Your grandmother moved here on purpose, Debbie said, her eyes sparkling with admiration. After we saw the same pattern in 3 counties, she decided to gather evidence from the inside. Tyler spun his laptop toward me and my jaw dropped. There was footage of Richard and Karen sneaking around, planting those caltrops in Grandma's driveway, and later smashing her windows. We've got it all, Marcus said, his voice steady. But we need Eleanor's case files to tie it together legally. I held up the USB, still stunned. It's all here, but they know I've got it. Now they'll come after me. Sophia's smile was sly, almost mischievous. That's exactly what we want. Wait, what? These 4 seniors laid out their plan, and I could hardly believe it. They were like a crime-fighting squad. Each had been collecting evidence for months. Marcus with his court connections, Debbie ready to blast the story in her paper, Tyler with his surveillance gold, and Sophia knowing every resident who'd been hurt by Pinnacle. But we need one more piece, Debbie said, pointing at me. And that's where you come in. She unrolled a map of Pinehurst Village, red X's marking homes already lost, blue circles showing those under attack. At the center, a huge chunk of land Pinnacle had gobbled up. This is their endgame, Marcus said, tapping a document showing plans for a glitzy luxury resort. They just need 4 more properties, including your grandmother's cottage. A resort? They were ruining lives for that? Tomorrow night's the emergency HOA meeting, Sophia said, her voice low. They're planning to vote on foreclosures for delinquent properties. Tyler's fingers flew across his keyboard. Their emails, which they really should have encrypted better, say they'll use the meeting to claim legal power to force sales. How'd you even get their emails? I asked, floored. Tyler grinned like a kid who'd hacked a game. I was an IT security specialist before retiring. Richard's password, his dog's name plus his birth year, total amateur. We hashed out a plan. We'd crash the meeting, bring affected residents, and expose everything, but we needed Grandma Eleanor there to seal the legal deal? I'll call her, I said, reaching for my phone. No phones. Sophia cut in, sharp as a whip. They could be tracking you. Use my landline. As I dialed, Debbie slid me a draft article, the headline screaming, State Prosecutor uncovers massive housing fraud ring in Pinterest Village. My eyes popped. Talk about a bombshell. You can't publish this yet, I warned, my voice tight. Oh, don't worry, Debbie winked. It's for after tomorrow's meeting. Grandma picked up on the third ring, and I spilled our plan, my words tumbling over each other. She went quiet, too quiet. It's too soon, she finally said. We need more proof linking Robert Thompson directly. We've got it, Tyler shouted, spinning his screen to show footage of Robert handing Richard documents behind the community center. Send that to my secure email, Grandma said when I described it, her voice sparking with excitement. And tell Sophia to activate protocol checkmate. Sophia's face lit up like a Christmas tree. She's ready to move finally. Sophia explained that protocol checkmate meant Grandma was coming with her team from the Attorney General's office. Talk about a power move. Everything had to be timed just right, like a high-stakes chess game. But as we nailed down details, the lights flickered and died. My stomach sank. Through the window, I spotted Karen's SUV creeping past Sophia's house, slow and menacing. They're looking for you, Marcus whispered, his voice grim. Tyler, show her the basement. Tyler led me downstairs to a cozy little room, a hidden gem. Welcome to our safe house, he said with a grin. We've hidden 3 other residents here when things got dicey. I tried to settle in, my mind a whirlwind. How had I ended up in a real-life thriller? Sophia handed me a legal pad, her expression serious. Write down everything you've seen since you got here, times, dates, exact words. Your testimony's got to be airtight. I started scribbling, but a creak upstairs made me freeze. Sophia came down moments later, her face pale as a ghost. They just updated the HOA newsletter. The meeting's been moved to tomorrow morning, not evening. Marcus's frown deepened. They're trying to rush this before Eleanor can arrive. Can we slow them down? I asked, desperation creeping in. Debbie's smile turned wicked. Leave that to me. I've got press credentials and a ton of pesky questions that'll stall any vote. As they headed upstairs to tweak our plan, I found a photo that had slipped from the files. Karen and Richard standing outside a prison, the caption reading, Thompson visits former HOA president, James Willis, convicted in similar scheme 2022. My blood ran cold. This wasn't their first rodeo. Someone had already gone to jail for this, and now the stakes felt sky high. Cars pulled up outside, and I peeked through the basement window, my heart racing. Richard was at Sophia's door, flanked by 2 strangers, one in a Pinterest Village security uniform. Miss Ramirez. Richard's voice carried all fake concern. We're doing wellness checks on elderly residents tonight. May we come in? At 11 p.m.? Sophia shot back, her tone dripping with disbelief. Not a chance. I slid down the wall, my pulse hammering. This wasn't just about Grandma's cottage anymore. We were all in deep danger. And the clock was ticking. My heart was still racing from Sophia's showdown at the door. Had she really just sent Richard packing at 11 p.m.? I barely had time to catch my breath when Tyler appeared at the basement stairs, his whisper cutting through the dark like a knife. Pack up, he hissed, his eyes wide with urgency. They're watching the house. We've got to move everyone before morning. My hands fumbled as I stuffed the files into my backpack, every rustle sounding way too loud. Then buzz! A text lit up the burner phone. Sophia had slipped me. It was Grandma. Don't go to the meeting. It's a trap. They know who I am. A trap? My stomach flipped. How had they figured out Grandma's secret? I peeked through Sophia's kitchen window, my pulse hammering, and there they were, Karen and Richard, stuffing official-looking papers into mailboxes, with those perfect fake smiles plastered on their faces. I ducked as Karen's gaze swept my way. Did she see me? They're delivering foreclosure notices, Sophia whispered, her voice tight. Special meeting tomorrow night to vote on problem properties. My phone buzzed again, and Grandma's voice came through, stronger than I'd heard in weeks, like a lion ready to roar. I'm coming home now, she declared. We're setting a trap. I gasped, clutching the phone. But your recovery, your hip. Some things matter more than my hip, Jamie. She snapped, fierce and unstoppable. I've got a team from the Attorney General's office ready. We need those two to spill their whole plan on record in front of witnesses. A trap for them? Oh, this was getting wild. Judge Marcus leaned in, his voice low and serious. Your grandmother's been building this case for months, Jamie. Pinnacle Development's already forced out elderly homeowners in 5 communities. Can you believe the nerve? Debbie, scribbling in her reporter's notebook packed with names and dates, nodded sagely. We've got to play dumb, she advised, her eyes gleaming. Let them think they're winning, lull them right into our hands. Hours later, I was helping Grandma Eleanor unpack in secret at Judge Marcus's house, my hands trembling with a mix of awe and nerves. She looked smaller than I remembered, frailer in her cardigan, but those eyes, they blazed with determination as she spread files across the dining table like a general laying out battle plans. Their mistake was targeting me, she said, her voice crackling with defiance as she showed me photos of Richard meeting Robert Thompson outside his law office, all sneaky handshakes and smug grins. They had no idea I was already investigating Pinnacle when I bought that cottage. Wait, Grandma had been playing them all along? The doorbell chimed and Tyler burst in, holding a tiny device that looked like something out of a spy movie. Got it, he announced, handing it to Grandma with a grin. Audio recorder disguised as a hearing aid. Just press the earpiece once to start recording. Grandma took it, her fingers steady as steel. We need them to admit everything publicly, she explained, her tone sharp enough to cut through lies. The HOA meetings are shot. That night, I tossed and turned, my mind racing. What if Karen and Richard sniffed out our plan? What if Grandma, still hobbling from surgery, wasn't strong enough for this fight? Outside my window, a car idled across the street. Its engine a low growl in the dark. Was someone watching us? The thought sent shivers down my spine. The next day dragged like molasses, every second ticking by in slow motion. I paced Grandma's living room, rehearsing my lines until my head spun. Could I pull this off? At 6:30 p.m., Judge Marcus rolled up to drive us to the community center, his face all business. Remember, he cautioned, his voice firm but kind. Act shocked and upset when they announce the foreclosures. We need their full confession on tape. Grandma checked her hearing aid recorder and smoothed her blouse, and for a moment, I saw her not as my cookie-baking grandma, but as the prosecutor she'd been for years, razor-sharp, focused, absolutely unstoppable. How had I never seen this side of her before? The community center hummed with nervous chatter as we walked in, the air thick with tension. Karen's smug smile wavered when she spotted Grandma leaning on my arm. Bet that threw her off. Richard, standing at the front, nearly fumbled his gavel, his eyes darting to Grandma like she was a ghost. Eleanor, what a surprise, Karen stammered, her voice cracking. We weren't expecting you till next month. Grandma's reply was pure sugar, dripping with charm. I recovered faster than expected. Couldn't miss an emergency meeting about my own property, now could I? Richard pulled himself together, clearing his throat. Please, take a seat. We're about to begin. Oh, he was in for it now. Across the room, I caught sight of Sophia, Debbie, and 5 other neighbors I hadn't met, all older folks, their faces etched with worry. This wasn't just about Grandma's cottage anymore. It was about all of them. Richard rapped his gavel, the sound sharp and final. First item, vote on foreclosure proceedings for 7 properties, with outstanding violations and unpaid special assessments. My heart pounded as he flashed a spreadsheet up on a screen. Grandma's cottage glaring at the top, followed by Sophia's house and 5 others. As you can see, Richard drawled, smug as ever, these properties have failed to comply with our standards. The board recommends immediate foreclosure proceedings. Immediate? Were they serious? Karen stood, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Pinnacle Development has generously offered to buy these distressed properties at 60% of market value. She chirped, all fake sympathy. It'll save these unfortunate homeowners from further embarrassment. Embarrassment? That was rich! A murmur rippled through the crowd, and I glanced at Grandma, who gave me a tiny nod go time. I shot to my feet, my voice ringing out. That's robbery! My grandmother's property has no legitimate violations, none. Richard's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. Young lady, your grandmother's cottage violates 6 different bylaws, and she's 3 months behind on special assessments. Special assessments you cooked up last month. I fired back, my anger boiling over how dare they. Karen stepped forward, her voice icy. The board's decision is final. These properties drag down our community's value. Robert has investors ready to build modern homes that'll boost everyone's property values. Grandma's voice cut through the chaos like a blade, calm but lethal. So that's what this is about, forcing out long-term residents for your husband's development company. Oh, snap, she went there. Richard slammed his gavel, his face red. That's enough. Security. Remove Miss Curtis and her granddaughter. 2 burly guys started toward us, but they froze as the back door swung open with a bang. 4 people in crisp suits marched in, badges glinting. Yes, the cavalry had arrived. Actually, Grandma said, standing taller. No trace of a limp now. I think this meeting should continue. My colleagues from the Attorney General's office are very interested in these special assessments and your ties to Pinnacle Development. Karen's face went white as a sheet caught. Richard lunged for his laptop, but Tyler was lightning fast, snatching it away. I've got some footage everyone needs to see, he announced, plugging it into the projector. The screen lit up, and there they were, Richard and Karen, clear as day, planting spikes in Grandma's driveway. Then later meeting Robert Thompson, passing envelopes like some shady deal. The crowd gasped. Was this really happening? This meeting's over, Richard bellowed, bolting for the side door, but 2 officers blocked his path like a brick wall. Richard Vaughn, Karen Thompson, one said, all business. We've got questions about your real estate practices across 3 counties. Grandma stood, no longer leaning on me or her cane, her presence commanding the room. And I've got a warrant to search the HOA's financial records and your personal communications with Pinnacle, she declared, turning to the stunned neighbors. I'm sorry for the deception, friends. I'm not just Eleanor Curtis, retiree. I'm Senior Prosecutor Eleanor Curtis, White-Collar Crime Division. My jaw hit the floor. Grandma was a total badass. Karen collapsed into a chair, her mouth flapping like a fish out of water. Richard's face twisted with rage. You'll never prove anything, he spat, but Grandma just smiled, cool as ice, and held up her hearing aid. I believe I just did, she said, revealing the recorder. The room exploded in gasps as state police officers filed in behind her, their boots echoing. Grandma stood tall, her eyes locked on Richard's panicked face. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered, backing away from the projector, still looping his crimes. Save it for court. The lead officer snapped, reading him his rights while another approached Karen, who looked like she might faint. I couldn't stop grinning as neighbors started whispering, piecing it all together. Justice was here. Miss S. Ramirez grabbed my hand, tears shining in her eyes. Your grandmother was building this case for all of us, she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Outside, news vans screeched into the lot. Grandma's team had tipped off the press for this sting. Debbie, snapping photos for her paper, shot me a wink talk about a front-page scoop. 3 weeks later, Grandma's blue cottage was a sight to behold, its roses climbing wild and free. No violation notices in sight, hallelujah. Neighbors swung by with casseroles and thank you cards, buzzing about how close Pinterest Village came to being swallowed by Pinnacle's greed. Over lemonade on her porch swing, Grandma filled me in, her voice calm but proud. The DAs, offering Richard and Karen a deal if they testify against Robert Thompson, but they'll still do time for property damage and fraud. Judge Marcus dropped by, waving papers with a grin. New HOA bylaws, Eleanor ready for your review. No more loopholes for developers to exploit. Finally, some fairness. What blew me away was how fast the community bounced back, pure magic. Sophia got elected HOA president, cheered on by everyone. Tyler rigged up free security systems for every elderly resident. Take that. Creeps! Even Karen's teenage son showed up, all sheepish, to apologize and offer to mow Grandma's lawn. All summer talk about a turnaround. Grandma gazed at kids playing across the street, where a for sale sign now stood in front of the Thompsons' empty mansion. You know, she mused, I was set to retire next month, but I think I'll stick around a bit longer. There are HOAs across this state that need cleaning up. I grinned, my heart swelling. Need a research assistant? I'm thinking of switching my major to law. Could I follow in her footsteps? With Grandma as my hero, anything seemed possible.